Okay. Hi, Jana.
Hi, Melissa. It's so good to see
Oh,
you again.
so good to see you too. My gosh, I feel so privileged that I've got time with you for you to share your story because I think you've got a cool one and you've
Mhm.
got some super cool things that you're doing in the world. And I'm just really excited to talk with you today. And you and I were laughing before we kind of started this call that you and I could probably gab till the cows came home, but
Mhm.
we're gonna we're gonna do our best to keep it tight with the message here.
Yeah.
So that being said, I'd love for you to just give a quick bio about
Mhm.
yourself because I didn't write that down. I could probably do a borderline from my head, but I think it would be better coming from you.
Mhm.
And then we can kind of jump into some of those questions I sent and then think about, the messages behind those and sharing your
Mhm.
story. So take it away.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for having me on today. I feel like we've got the Melissa and Jana show here
I know.
this
We
morning.
would always joke about having the Melissa Jana podcast, right?
Yeah, here we go.
Here
Our
we
origin
go.
story unfolding in real time. But yeah, so happy to be here. And in terms of who I am and my background, like you said, I've had a really interesting career journey and specifically a really interesting journey into entrepreneurship. It's actually been about 5.5 years now that I left my corporate career behind and dove headfirst into the world of business and all the things, which was incredible and such a journey and taught me so much along the way. And now, as for what I do, so I'm a entrepreneur. I'm a business coach. So I have a private practice working with women who are transitioning out of employment and into entrepreneurship and wanting to really approach business in more holistic and sustainable and life-giving ways. And
Wow.
then I also am the author of Bedside Business Plan, which I often refer to as my book baby. And so, Bedside Business Plan is essentially a guided journal to help anyone with a business idea journal their business plan. So, there's 100 different questions and prompts that take people through that whole process. And it was really interesting coming up with the journal and then now, having a product based business and getting out into the world and getting into big retail. But the origins of that business are really interesting and came from this place within me that was like, I was working with so many women entrepreneurs and, even had a lot of friends and family coming to me saying, I want to start a business, but I just don't know where to start. Business feels so intimidating. Writing a business plan is scary. And so I really feel like it's become my mission over these last 5 years to just help more people start businesses, make that experience a lot more approachable and warm and accessible for people. And then also, when people do become entrepreneurs, it's like, really helping them build businesses that are more sustainable to run because burnout is a very real thing. I think we see a lot of people working both in careers and in entrepreneurship at the expense of themselves and actually self-abandoning in order to you know get ahead, become more successful faster and more quickly. And so I think that that's the reality for a lot of us, but I actually don't think it has to be that way. And by understanding ourselves and honoring our needs and our boundaries, I think our work gets to actually become something we love and not something that burns us out. So
Totally.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a bit about my journey and my area of passion for sure.
Yeah, yeah, it's so cool. And I think you're right. I think this concept of like even for me, like starting my own business, a lot of people have been like, "Oh my gosh, you're
Mm.
so brave." I never thought about it as bravery, kind of scary, I suppose, but that just
Mm.
goes to show you how intimidating it can be to think about starting your own company. So you have kind of boiled it down into this beautiful, which by the way, you guys, like I'm telling you, like this book is beautiful. I bought it from Jana and her brother. She works with her brother, and it's such a beautiful compilation of like she said, questions and things that really get the juices flowing, and it's not overwhelming, and you can kind of take your time with it if you want, or you could let it rip and do
Yeah,
it all
let
in
it rip, as we like to
one.
say.
You can really get nutty with it and do it all in one shot, or you can kind of take your time with it and just let it like guide you. And it's really a beautiful book. So we appreciate you writing that.
Thank you.
So So Jana, you have an interesting story because, like you said, I would say at a fairly young age, if I
Mhm.
may,
Yep.
as a young professional, you pulled the ripcord, if you will, on starting your own business, and I think it's kind of scary to do it even now for me, but let alone at sort of a younger age, we're like, oh my gosh, like, what if this doesn't work out? I mean, there's so many questions. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, what was your experience after school or after university, or kind of how you entered in the world of work, and sort of talk us through that time of,
Yeah.
okay, I'm done with that part of my life. Now I'm going to enter into the world of work, and lead us up to that day where
Ooh.
your last day of work of the corporate world. So I'd
Yeah.
love to hear what you experienced and how you felt. And if I may, like, invite you to be slightly vulnerable of some of the things that maybe you experienced after school. Just because I think a
Mhm.
lot of people are experiencing, that pressure to get a job and all the things. So tell me a little bit about that. I'd love to hear that story of post graduation.
Yeah, no, and it's a story I could go into great detail about,
Yeah,
but I'll keep it incisive yet vulnerable for the purpose of this
perfect.
conversation.
Right.
But yeah, so university, I did a BCom, specializing in marketing, and then I also got a BA in psychology.
What's a,
And
what's a BCom? I think that is that a Canadian.
oh, it's a Bachelor of Commerce. We should probably
Okay,
mention
Bachelor of
you're in
Commerce.
the US and I'm in Victoria, BC, Canada.
Yeah,
So
I didn't know if that was a Canadian thing or not.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
We're not that far apart, but there are some things that are different.
There
So,
are some things that are different. Yeah. So Bachelor of Commerce. So
got
that's
it.
just like a
Okay.
general business degree, specialized
Got
in marketing. And it's interesting because entrepreneurship was always a part of my life. My dad was an entrepreneur. I'd
it.
always been fascinated by entrepreneurship, actually from a very young age. So selling cookies at our family garage sales, selling magazine subscriptions to neighbors door to door. Like it was always
Okay.
there.
A little
And
thread
so
there.
it's always been there, but there was this temptation to kind of pursue a more typical career path, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And I say temptation, but what I really mean is, like, everyone around you, people ask what you're doing after you graduate and what kind of
What
job are you
job?
doing?
What
What's
interviews?
the job? Exactly,
Lots of
exactly,
pressure.
exactly. And so I almost felt like throughout my university years, the idea of becoming an entrepreneur kind of got put on the back burner, but I always knew I was going to be an entrepreneur. Like that was always the thing that I was drawn to. I was always watching videos on YouTube of women starting businesses and how they were growing them. So yeah, that was all there. Um, but I remember, going about my marketing classes and, studying marketing. And while I really enjoyed those classes, there was never anything that stood out to me like, oh, this is the kind of marketing job I want. Or even in psychology, like this is the kind of psychology job I want. And I
Right.
think I always knew I was going to work in business. Like I wasn't going to necessarily become a psychologist, but I felt like the psychology would support my business background and my
Of
business
course.
interests. So anyways, fast forward to my very last semester of university, and I took a marketing strategy course. And that for me was like when a bit of a light bulb went off, and I was like, oh, I could do this for work, because it felt really like rigorous and interesting, right? Like companies launching new products. How do you get it into a new market? What's the competitive landscape like? Like I
Right.
loved all of that bigger thinking. So I had that light bulb go off, and then it was about time to graduate. And you're not going to believe this, Melissa, but when I graduated, I actually applied for one job and one job only. And it was with Canada's largest advertising agency. I applied for a
Wow.
new graduate marketing strategist position. And I thought to myself, if I don't get that job, I'm just going to go start a business and I'm going to take that chance. And I mean, I should also mention here too that my parents have always been incredibly supportive of
That's cool.
anything that I've, chosen to do, which I think
What makes you happy? Yeah.
yeah, I think I'm so fortunate in that
I'm
sense,
saying.
because I actually had the freedom within my own home to explore.
Yeah.
And not everyone has that, right? And so,
Correct. Yeah.
I was lucky to be able to say, I'll either get this job or I'm going to try my own thing.
What is this?
I'm gonna try my own thing. But anyways, I ended up getting the job, and I worked at this advertising agency for 2 years. I learned a ton about how to build brands, how to build businesses. I was flown to New York to help the company pitch multi-million-dollar projects to clients.
Whoa.
It was an insane experience, because I felt like I got 5 years of experience under my belt, but I was actually only at the company for 2. So I actually became an entrepreneur when I was 25. But in this moment, I'm thinking back to like something that someone said to me when I first started at the agency. And this woman essentially said to me, you know, if you're working at this agency and you're working in this world of marketing, you have to be a yes woman. Say yes to anything that they throw at you, say yes to every project, and, you know, go for it all. And it's funny because like, even when you sent me those questions and I was reflecting on it, it was interesting how I came back to that moment and that conversation, because I saw how that actually colored my experience being in corporate. And looking back on it all, like, I actually wish I would have said no to more things.
Yeah.
Because even though I was there for 2 years, like, I worked my buns off. And I was actually really burnt out at the age of 25. And I was feeling really anxious, honestly, daily, driving to work. I remember flying to New York and just feeling super anxious on the plane, sitting in my hotel room, you know, the night before I was about to be part of a pitch, and just like having to breathe and meditate and calm myself down. And so I think for me, it was like my nervous system actually couldn't take that world of work. And I think had I been able to set boundaries or advocate for myself, or push back on some of the requests that were just frankly too much, I might have actually stayed in that world of advertising for longer. But you know, it really became all too much. And I think I reached a point 2 years in where I was like, you know, I think I actually have what I need from this experience. I've had a ton of, you know, great opportunities come my way, and, you know, in the role that I was in, I built a ton of skills. And there was definitely a voice within me that was like, actually, I remember it was a very specific drive I took in 2017, end of 2017. I drove out to the mountains, and a voice chimed in that was like, you're going to become an entrepreneur in 2018, next year. Yeah. So then anyways, long story short, I quit my job in April of 2018. And I remember just packing up my desk, you know, that day, and just repeating the words in my head, like, I'm free, I'm free, I'm free. Just felt like there was such freedom in store. And I'll leave it there because I know you have other questions, but that was like the journey leading up to me leaving. And something had to change, I think. And then it was funny too, because at the age of 25, I had that, again, light bulb moment. And I was like, I'm not going to wait till I'm, you know, 40 or 50 to become an entrepreneur. I'm going to do it now and take the risk.
I love that. Well, and thanks for sharing kind of how the corporate job made you feel, because, you know, it's something that's hard to talk about, right? Of feeling like, man, I've got to take some breaths here and meditate and really try to get myself in a headspace to go do this job. And I think a lot of people feel that way. You know, they feel I had someone tell me the other day, like, they would hope that they would get sick or hit a deer on the way to work. Literally, someone said that to me because they were out in the country. And I hope I just kind of hit a deer on the way to work so I don't have to go to work. And I was like, gosh, wow, that is intense. So I get kind of that like anticipation leading up to a certain point when you're, you know, feeling the anxiety, and that's not normal, right? I mean, it's normal for your body to respond that way, but if that's how you're feeling, that's kind of a sign to say, this probably isn't quite right here. Cool. Real quick question on some of that story, which I think was, I love so much about it, and I could dig into so many points into that, but especially your mom and dad just kind of being like, hey, you know, like, do as you wish. I had that too, which I feel very blessed to. My parents, I could have been like, Mom, I'm going to go like shovel dirt up a hill, and my mom would have been like, cool, if that makes sense.
Go do it, honey.
Our only requirement was like, get an education. Outside of that, it was pretty free. But I was wondering, when you were feeling those, you know, the kind of pressures, maybe the anxieties and things like that on your kind of in your kind of job, how much help did you feel like you had to reach for, maybe outside of like your little circle of maybe family and friends? Do you feel like you had access to help or guidance on what the heck to do now that you're feeling these feelings of anxiousness and kind of worry for whatever's coming next? Do you feel like you had the support you needed?
You know, in many ways, no. Like I feel as though, feeling this nervousness and this anxiety just became very normalized. Like I got used to who I was in that state, which
Right.
is kind of scary, right? And I think so often we become okay with being actually deeply unhappy in these scenarios.
Yeah.
So I think, I had my family, I had friends, and thankfully I actually also had a woman named Carol Wirt in my life who was a career coach that I met in university who continued to support me throughout my career. And so she, was just instrumental in terms of, providing guidance and how I could navigate certain scenarios and how I could really grow my career in ways that were actually in alignment with me.
Mhm.
But outside of that, like I just remember feeling very lost in the whole career experience. And like I was just trying my best to perform well at this agency. And it came at the expense of my mental well-being, my emotional health. And I think this is the case actually for a lot of people. Again, I think we compromise ourselves in ways that aren't always obvious, but over time you almost start to feel a bit chipped away at, right? If you're not in the right role or with the right company or, doing what you're really meant to be doing in the world.
Yeah, I often refer to it as twisting yourself into a pretzel, to accommodate whatever environment you are. And I think women are actually really good at that, unfortunately, especially women. I think they're really, really good at twisting themselves into a pretzel to sort of accommodate whatever environment that they're placed in. So, and on top of that question, I guess my other one was just, what have you had that helped guide you to where you are today? But I think we might have maybe touched on a little bit. It sounds like your parents were pretty supportive. You had a coach that helped you a great deal. Anything else that you might want to add to that of what was the supportive as you sort of transitioned or pivoted? In this kind of corporate environment into entrepreneurial environment?
Yeah, so I would say that I've always been someone who's been very passionate about knowing myself. So I've always been a journal. I've always been, a self-reflective person. I've always gravitated towards self-help books over, fiction books and things like that. Yeah, us.
Hi, you read self-help.
Yeah.
We need a support group for that.
100%. But I really think that actually really deeply served me along my career journey, because I think that you know yourself, and the more that you connect to, again, your needs and your desires through that time alone, through journaling and even through having the right conversations with people, right? Career coaches and that sort of thing. I think that is essential for making wise and grounded decisions as you move forward, because if you don't know yourself, I think you operate at the mercy of the voices and the information outside of you. And I think even, when it comes to intuition, I've heard a lot of people say, yeah, I really struggle to connect with my intuition and hear that inner voice. And I really believe that we all have access to it, but we just haven't actually cultivated a relationship with ourselves, or spent time even alone, right? Not non-distracted time alone starts you to lean into the practice of connecting and hearing what's true for us in the midst of such noisy world. So I would say that practice of journaling and connecting and knowing myself really served me, and again allowed me to make pretty bold and big decisions at a young age. So
and thank God you did, man. That's all I have to say about that. Because for everybody watching and or listening, Jana has been a massive impact in my life as my business coach. So she's done a fantastic job guiding me and helping me and figuring out what I wanted to do as well. So thank goodness you listened to the intuition that you had. Yeah, that's good. So I think that, as a recap on that, just figuring out like the boil down, right? Like the kind of punchline there. I think the bullet point is, know thyself, or however you want to think about it, or, what actually makes you happy. And I think too many people, I've been on this kick of talking about, lots of money doesn't equal happiness, but happiness actually equals money, because when you're really happy and you're doing what you love and you're super into it, like, believe it or not, like, money actually does exist in that space and in that environment. So, so I think
Yeah.
that's like one thing that we're not really taught per se, or not, culturally accepting of. It's more just like, go for the money, go for the money, go for the money. But then
Right.
we can wonder why we're not happy. So I like that part of figuring out kind of who you are, and that sort of supported your
Mhm.
even ability to take the leap, right? Because you were pretty solid in kind of what you wanted, how you wanted your life to look, and you moved forward that way. And that was for me too. Back when I would say, like, I think I was probably late 20s when I hired a coach to help me, and that was one of the key not measurements, but key, like, kind of outcomes was, who was I, and what did I really want? What made me happy? And what was my values? What were my strengths? What were my, motivations? And if you don't know those things, it does becomes maybe a little bit more difficult to drive in a direction. It's like trying to get somewhere without a map. Yeah.
100%. No, I definitely
Yeah.
agree. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, like we're talking about too, the more that you know yourself and you're in tune with yourself, I think you're better able to know, when there are seasons where you're just kind of taking little steps forward, or, in, I don't know how to say this, but almost like in the microness of it all, kind of day in and day out, you're chipping away, you're doing your thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. We have those seasons and those times, but then there's also times in our life where it's like, we have to make a bigger move, right? Like, we have to take a chance on ourselves, or we have to shift something, whether it's careers or starting a business or whatever. And I think that we forget that we can actually do incredible things. Like, we have the capacity to figure things out on the fly. If we jump, we're not going to let ourselves fall. Like, we're
Right.
so creative, and we're, again, so capable. And I think it's just so worth it to pursue what you love in this lifetime, because it's just so fulfilling when you do.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I posted something about this the other day, is like, with there being so many ways to make money, like, or make a
Yeah.
living, I mean, like, endless ways to make money,
Mhm.
right? And
Money's everywhere.
yeah, and why would we not choose something that makes us really happy to make money, and I always go with that kind of route too. I was just talking to someone the other day, and I said, like, you're smart, you're ambitious, you're degreed, you've
Yeah.
got the degrees.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of things you could probably do in life
Yes.
to have a good living, because you're just so capable.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
cool. Okay. Well, thanks for sharing all that. I love that. What kind of, I guess, parting words would you have for a young
Mhm.
professional, especially the sort of, ambitious young professionals too, right? Because again, if we go back to kind of the beginning of the call, where we talked about, there's just a lot of pressure, like, you graduate from college, it's like, okay, now what are you doing? That's the first thing out of somebody's mouth when they're talking to you as a postgraduate. And
Yeah.
even if it's not university, if it's just high school, and you're just graduating. So what
Mhm.
would you say would be some kind of parting words or advice, or anything you just want to offer the sort of young, ambitious professional as
Yeah.
navigating this world of work, whether it be entrepreneurship or an
Mhm.
corporation, et cetera?
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind here is yeah. The thing that comes to mind is to be discerning. And I heard this saying once, and I really like it. And it's be mindful whose ground you lay your ear to.
Mm,
Because there are some, external voices and guidance and advice that actually is so supportive and helpful.
yeah,
And then there's, guidance and advice that you get that actually doesn't feel true for you. And it
yeah.
actually might even just be someone else projecting their fear onto
Mm,
you.
big
And
time.
so I think, again, just being really discerning about the advice that you integrate, or the advice that you take forward with you.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's helpful and supportive, and other times it can actually be quite distracting. So,
Yeah. No,
yeah.
I love that. That's so succinct, so beautiful, and perfectly said. Yeah. Because and the thing about it is, when you do start asking people for advice, especially people who love you, like parents or really
Right.
close friends, like,
Yeah.
they want the best for you. So they're going to have a bit of a fear factor, because they don't want you to suffer. They don't want you to be without money or without a job or what have you. And so they want the best for you. And so there's a big push to say, hey, like, do the safe thing, and not necessarily, hey, what do you want to do and what do you love? And it's with the best intentions, of course. But no, I think that's great advice. I love that. I'm gonna have to re-listen to this to grab that quote you shared there. It's a quotable quote, if you will.
Ooh, amazing. I love it when you just come out.
Yeah, I would say a tweetable tweet, but that's not a thing anymore. Yeah. Well, Jana, thank you so much for having this conversation. I think it's hugely beneficial for folks, especially young, ambitious professionals who are entering the world of work or been in it for a while and are kind of getting stuck or not feeling the vibe in their job, or, there's been a lot of people who have been laid off and now they're taking a beat to say, what do I really want to do? So I think this is wildly helpful. Your story is beautiful. I love that your parents, I love hearing that your parents are kind of like, do your thing. It's great. So even if parents are listening to this, it's a great message for them to let, their kids, run free or fly free, I guess. So, so thank you so much. I sincerely appreciate your time. Your story is beautiful. And again, if you guys want to find Jana, she's on LinkedIn. She's on social media with all of her business is her company's name. And she's got her business plan book on Amazon now. And tell me the actual perfect title so we can find it on Amazon.
Yep. Bedside Business.
Bedside Business Plan. Okay. Bedside Business Plan, in case someone actually searches that. So yeah. So thank you, Jana. I really appreciate it. And we will talk to you soon.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Melissa.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.